Alrighty. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to Monday Morning Inspirations. Thank you all for joining us. We have Colonel Senator John C. Astle with us this morning. And before I bring him on, I'm going to read a couple of quotes. And the title of the message today is Welcoming Home Our Vietnam Veterans. The first quote is, "At last, after all these years, I and my fellow veterans are being honored. For too many years, we were ignored or even shamed. I'm honored to have my pride in my service once again." Somebody else wrote, "Best I have felt in a long time. Thank you." I was in Vietnam on and off for 13 years. When I came back to the US, I was disparaged and spat upon. I yearned for the words, "Thank you and welcome home." Now I have heard them. And these are quotes from Vietnam veteran attendees of the Gilchrist Welcome Home Vietnam Veteran Celebration from 2018 and 2019. Now for our very own John Astle. This is his biography or his bio. Love of country prompted John Astle to serve in the United States Marine Corps from 1966 to 1975. His service included a tour of duty in Vietnam as a combat helicopter pilot and a tour as a presidential helicopter pilot. In the course of his military service, Mr. Astle received several personal decorations, including the Legion of Merit, 2 Purple Hearts, the Meritorious Service Medal, 31 Air Medals, and the Presidential Service Badge. After resigning his regular commission in 1975, Mr. Astle began a 21-year commitment with the Marine Corps Reserves. During that time, he volunteered and served 5 months of active duty in the Persian Gulf War. He retired as a colonel from the Marine Corps in 1996. Mr. Astle has served the citizens of Maryland for more than 3 decades. Astle was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates for 12 years and the Senate for 24 years for the 30th Legislative District that includes Annapolis. Senator Astle retired in January of 2019. He was the sponsor of the SB 90 bill and instrumental in getting the bill passed into law, making March 30th Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day in Maryland. This year, Mr. Astle published Jungle Combat, the written transcripts from the audio diary of his experiences in Vietnam that he sent to his family in Barboursville, West Virginia, from the spring of 1968 through the summer of 1969. His account is unabridged and in the words of Lieutenant Colonel George Forrest, "We were soldiers once." A power-packed, no-holds-barred account of the day-to-day activities as seen through the eyes of a combat helicopter pilot. It captures the realism of war and edible impact the Vietnam era had on so many of us who serve. So, Mr. Astle, we would like to say thank you for your service, for one. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. So we welcome you and we open the floor for you now.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the words. Earlier, I'd spoken to Diane about what she wanted me to talk about. And what she really wants to hear, what she wants you to hear, and the people that listen to this is the legislation. You know, when I came back from Vietnam, I came back to a country that held no joy for us. People abandoned us. They turned their back on us. And the one guy that you quoted said he was spit on. Well, I got spit on in the Los Angeles airport. So it's something that we all experience. We came back from what we thought was going to be a glorious experience. I mean, we'd all had family that had served in World War II, and we'd heard the stories about combat, but they were always told in a way that made them seem really glorious. Well, we discovered pretty quickly when we got to Vietnam that war is not glorious. It's a dirty, ugly undertaking. And the only thing that really matters when you get right down to it are your friends. That's what you really, you fight for your friends, and you look after your friends, and your friends look after you. And those friendships are really, really important. So after I got back and I suffered through the things that we all did, the memories and the scars, the emotional scars that we had to deal with. And many of us had to do it by ourselves, and sometimes in small groups, but there was no real organized way for us to confront those demons that lived in the back of our minds. So I was in the legislature, and I got invited to an event, and in the county, the hospice organization had this tribute to service that they did for patients that they had been in the military. And I got invited to go to one of those, and I saw the impact that it had on these dying veterans. They brought in people in uniform. They brought in people who were veterans but were not in uniform, but all had served or were serving. And it really meant a great deal to these people. So in the course of watching this and talking to some of my friends, some of my fellow veterans, about the fact that there was nothing organized to give us the opportunity to get together, to bond, to talk. And so the concept of putting an event on and making sure that the event stayed on was embodied in the concept of a piece of legislation. It just happened at the time that I was the only Vietnam veteran in the Senate of Maryland. There was another guy who was a Vietnam era veteran, and he and I used to joke that he was in the Army on the Italian Riviera while I was in Vietnam flying helicopters. But nonetheless, he had served. So in the course of putting this bill together, once I got it drafted and designated March 30th as the day, I wanted to make it March 31st, which is my birthday, but they said, no, that's not the real day. It's the 30th. So I got the bill drafted, and I went to introduce it, and the other members of the Senate found out that that this bill was, excuse me, that was the cat. That this bill had been drafted and was ready to be introduced, and every single member of the Senate wanted to be on the bill. So we had all 47 members had their names on the bill. And then the House found out that we had a bill in the Senate, and so they got a copy of the legislation and put it in the House, and every single member of the House of Delegates signed on. So the entire legislature was a sponsor, or were sponsors of that bill. The bill passed, and the governor signed it the day it passed, which is unusual because the normal process in Maryland is that the bills get passed and then they're kind of held up until June, and that's where they have the bill signing. So the big, they sign maybe 100 bills in a day. But he signed it in his office, and as soon as it was signed, we went to a local hotel where they had set up a room, and we had the first welcome home. And it was a pretty great event. We had guys wearing uniforms, and we had guys wearing parts of uniforms, and we had a lot of guys that were, for the first time, able to sit down and talk to another veteran who had shared the same kind of experience that they had. And it was such a good thing that we decided that we were going to make this permanent, and we did. And then Gilchrist took over the responsibilities, and this has turned into an incredibly big, important event for those of us in Maryland who served in Vietnam. So I'm proud to have been the author of that bill. I'm proud of my service in Vietnam, and I'm proud that I still have many friends that I can talk to. So with that, I guess I don't know that I have much else I can say, unless there's something that you particularly want to hear.
Yes, so I will again say thank you, because for longer than some of us have been alive, you have been busy and doing things and supporting people. So from 1966 up to 2019,
Well,
that's longer
actually,
than I've been born.
Janet, started earlier than that. I enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve in 1961. So, my service was more than 30 years if you include both the reserve time and the active duty time.
Thank you. So I will open the floor now for any questions or comments anyone may have for Mr. Astle. Please unmute and give a comment or ask any questions you may have at this time.
This may be too hard of a question, but I'm very interested in this. Both my father and my brother served in Vietnam, and they've never said one word about it. And so I'll ask you, what is it that you want us to know about Vietnam? Or is that too hard of a question? Is it just too broad and too big? But we weren't there and we don't know. So what is it that you really want us to know?
Let me say that each of us that served saw a different war. It depended on your mindset, the experiences that you had. I, as a pilot, saw a different war from the guys on the ground. And I, as a transport helicopter pilot, saw a different war than a Huey gunship pilot. So, it all is kind of an individual thing. I think for a lot of guys, because of the rejection that they felt when they came home, it made it difficult for them to open up and say anything to anybody, because they were afraid that would just, cause a greater sense of rejection. And so, excuse me, I think that's one of the values of this Welcome Home event. It brings these veterans together so that they're with people that they can trust. I wrote a speech, and I have it here, and I'm going to read you a piece of this because I think this talks about what you're talking about. I'm having trouble. This cat really loves me and won't get out of the way. I said earlier that we'd heard stories from our fathers and our big brothers about their experiences in World War II and Korea. And we thought we knew what war was about. When we got there, and we found it was an ugly thing filled with fear, death, destruction, and deep emotion as we lost friends. What replaced, one of the first things to go is patriotism, mom and apple pie, that all goes out the window. And what replaces it is an intense loyalty to one's friends. We had a little saying in my squadron, better dead than look bad. And the worst thing you could do was look bad by letting your friends down. And that just caused people to do things that were sometimes thought of as being very heroic. And all they were doing was taking care of their friends. And I think that mindset came back here. And if you were in a place where you didn't have friends that had served and had a similar experience, it was difficult to talk to other people about those experiences. One of the things that helped me, I think, was that I stayed on active duty for another 5 years after I came back from Vietnam, and I was flying with guys that I'd served with in Vietnam. And we told the same stories over and over again. And I think in a way that helped us come back to earth. And I once said to my wife that I thought I got by without any PTSD, and it was because I was with friends and we talked and shared those experiences. And she said, no, you didn't. It came to you in the night in your dreams. The nightmares that I don't, I didn't remember when I woke up, but in the course of the night, I talked in my sleep and yelled in my sleep, and it was apparent that there was something going on inside my head. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, I realize it's a very large question, and I realize for each individual, it's so different and unique and personal. It's just so little of it was talked about that we who didn't go, we just don't know. We really don't know. My father used to say, if you were there, um, you don't want to go back and relive it. And if you weren't there, you don't want to know.
Yeah, well, I think there's some truth to that. I've not gone back to Vietnam. Some people have gone back to places where they served. I had no interest in doing that. I put that whole thing behind me.
Well, we thank you for your courage and your bravery.
Well, I will tell you there was something good that came out of that experience, and I sort of do this tongue in cheek, but in the legislature, people sometimes would get really upset about an issue. I mean, they would just be really emotional. We got to deal with this, and I would hold up my hand and say, wait, are they shooting real bullets? And people would look at me and say, what? I said, well, if they're not shooting real bullets, then this is not a real problem. And we have time to deal with it.
That's very wise, and you certainly gained a huge perspective.
Yeah. Well, I learned to make decisions. That's another thing. As an officer, you have to make decisions that are often life and death decisions, or life or death decisions for the people under your charge. As a pilot, I had to make decisions that, do I risk my airplane and the lives of my 3 crewmen, or do I do something that maybe is a little risky but may have a better outcome? So you got to think those things through, but you don't have a lot of time. And I was 25. I wasn't, in my mind, old enough to have the maturity necessary to make those. But you know what? You get it pretty quickly.
Yes, I think the most that any of us can probably experience, or just get a glimpse of what you actually experience, is just through a movie. That's the closest many of us has been. So some of the things you said that resonate, that are really important, is definitely having a strong support system of friends and people who care about you, that you can talk with and share with, and that's definitely important.
A little coffee group that I meet with almost every morning, and most of them, the guys that come, are veterans. There's a 3-star admiral that comes, and when he was a Lieutenant JG, he commanded a river patrol boat in the southern part of Vietnam, down in the deltas, and so he had experienced combat where people were shooting at him and they were shooting back. And then the guy that you mentioned, George Forrest, who was a company commander in the Battle of the Ia Drang and distinguished himself with his valor. He struggled for a long time, and I invited him to come join us. And his wife told me that was the best thing that's happened to him, because now he's got a group that he's really comfortable with, and he knows that he can tell stories, and we understand. So we meet almost every morning. We don't take a roll. If you want something to eat, you bring it yourself, and we just drink coffee and tell stories. And we talk about stuff too. I mean, we have discussions. That one of the guys was a teacher at the Naval Academy teaching physics, and he can talk about all kinds of esoteric things that we don't even understand. But we can get down and talk the real stuff too.
Yep.
So anyway.
Would anyone else like to share a comment or have a question for Mr. Astle?
Well, I really appreciate your service, sir. And I really, there is a camaraderie in military folk that's just, it's such a tight bond, and you're describing that so nicely. In a very small way, even in fields like in healthcare and in hospice, we also have a camaraderie because of that similarity. So we can understand that a little bit because of what we go through every day when we work with dying patients. And we appreciate it when what you're doing, sir, comes together with what we're doing. So it's interesting. Thank you so much.
So we got a note on the screen from somebody named Joyner who thanks us. This is a new experience for me. So there's one other thing that I'd share. This was in the speech that I told you that I wrote, and I delivered to a group of Vietnam veterans in the Senate chamber. The president of the Senate said, "We got these veterans coming and we want you to talk to them because you're one of them." And so I put this together, and I look back on it and I can't believe that I said these things, but I said this: there's a saying that's engraved on brass plaques that I'm sure are hanging in many homes today. There's one that hangs in my home. It goes like this: war is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling, which thinks that nothing is worth war, is much worse. A man who has nothing for which he is willing to fight, nothing he cares about more than his own safety, is a miserable creature and has no chance of being free unless made and kept so by the exertions of better men than himself. And then I said to these veterans that were in the chamber, my brothers, we are those men.
Well, John, I want to thank you for sponsoring the bill, for being a part of every celebration since 2015. What we've heard, John, is from family members. I've never heard Jane, you may want to invite your family, but many family members said, my father, my brother, my sister never talked about Vietnam until this celebration. And now we have one sponsor that says, now I can't shut them up. And so they are sharing their stories. And many, as you heard the quotes, many, because of you, John, you started this, many of them have never been welcomed home. And now with a joyous community, I mean, the celebrations, I think our biggest was over 1,100. We have a whole grateful community welcoming home our Vietnam veterans. It's the two sweetest words that I think our veterans long to hear that they never heard. And so this celebration is also providing that welcome home. They never, ever, many of them had never heard those words until our celebration. And so, John, I commend you, your leadership, your ongoing, relentless involvement in making sure that these celebrations happen. So thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for your service to our state. And if you all don't know, John is going to be our MC for this year's celebration on Sunday. And it's virtual. So if, please, you can register. Anybody can be a part of the celebration virtually. It's the first time we are live streaming it. We want to, John's vision is we want to touch every Vietnam veteran that wants to be touched and their family in this state. So, John, I salute you and am so grateful that you're my friend.
Well, thanks, Diane. I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to get this started, and I value the fact that I get to take part in these every year. And I will hope to be a part of this until eventually the celebration is about me after I'm gone.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Astle. Yes, you saw Renee had posted. Thank you so much for sharing and for your services and your experiences. Wayman said, thank you for your service and for all you do. Your service and your work have touched so many. Thank you so much for your service.
Thanks. You know, we start down the trail when we're young, not knowing where it's going to take us. And when I first enlisted, there was no war. And so it was kind of an adventure to be a young Marine private in a reserve unit. But that trail eventually led me to a commission, to flight school, to Vietnam, and all the other things that I've done. I can also say I never intended to be a legislator either. That was kind of, somebody challenged me one night and said, you know, you ought to run for office. And I had, yeah, I said, sure, I'll try that. And I won, much to my surprise. And so I lasted for 36 years.
Okay. So you still had that fight in you, even after the war. If you get a challenge, you take it on, right?
You're a warrior. You're a warrior. When you're a warrior, you're a warrior. You can't get past it.
Well, that's good. That's good to remember. A warrior is always a warrior. And we're all fighting some type of battle every day that we have to defeat.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
Well, we thank you. We thank everyone for joining us this morning. And as Diane said, please, if you're able to join the Welcome Home Vietnam tribute, which will be virtual, please register. Diane, has a link been sent out for everyone to be able to sign up to register for it?
Yeah, you know what? I can thank you for that reminder. I'll send you all the invitations so you can sign up. I'll send it to all Gilchrist.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Mr. Astle, for everything that you've done and all that you're continuing to do. And happy early birthday.
Thank you.
If we don't get to see you again before then, we wish you a happy birthday. Yay to my Aries brother. I'm 2 days before you, so happy birthday.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you. Thanks, Gina. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.